When World War II ended in 1945, millions of people finally felt relief. The most destructive conflict in human history was over. Cities were in ruins, families were broken, and the world looked ready to rebuild. But even before the dust settled, a new conflict was already forming. One that wouldn't be fought with tanks rolling across borders, but with fear, influence, and the constant threat of nuclear destruction. This was the Cold War, the moment when the world split in two. After the war, two nations stood above all others, the United States and the Soviet Union. They had fought side by side against Nazi Germany, but their alliance had always been fragile. Their visions for the future couldn't have been more different. The United States believed in democracy, capitalism, and individual freedom. The Soviet Union, under Joseph Stalin, believed in communism, state control, and strict central power. At first, these differences seemed manageable, but as Europe tried to rebuild, the true divide became impossible to ignore. Germany, the country that had started the war, was carved into 4 occupation zones, controlled by the United States, Britain, France, and the Soviet Union. Even Berlin, the capital, was split into 4 parts, despite being deep inside Soviet-controlled territory. What began as a temporary arrangement soon became a symbol of something far bigger. Across Eastern Europe, Stalin moved quickly. One by one, countries like Poland, Hungary, Bulgaria, Romania, and East Germany fell under communist governments backed by the Soviet Union. Stalin claimed these nations were needed for protection, a buffer zone against future invasions. But to the west, it looked like expansion, a growing red shadow stretching across the continent. In 1946, Winston Churchill delivered a famous speech warning the world that an iron curtain has descended across Europe. This wasn't a physical wall, at least not yet, but a political divide that separated free democracies in the West from communist states in the East. The world was beginning to split. To counter Soviet influence, the United States launched the Marshall Plan, a massive economic program that poured billions of dollars into rebuilding Western Europe. The idea was clear: a strong, stable Europe would resist communist movements. The Soviet Union refused the aid and pressured its allies to reject it as well. This created 2 Europes, developing in completely different directions. But the first real crisis of the Cold War came in Berlin. In 1948, Stalin tried to push Western powers out of the city by blocking all land routes into West Berlin. No food, no fuel, no goods could enter. More than 2 million people were trapped. Instead of giving up, the United States and its allies launched the Berlin Airlift, one of the largest humanitarian operations in history. For nearly a year, planes delivered supplies every day, landing every few minutes. Coal, medicine, food, and even candy for children. It was a powerful message. The West would not abandon Berlin. Finally, in 1949, Stalin ended the blockade, but the damage had been done. Trust between East and West was gone. That same year, the Western nations formed NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. It was a military alliance built on a simple promise: an attack on one member is an attack on all. The Soviet Union responded years later with the Warsaw Pact, uniting communist nations under its control. The world was now officially divided into 2 armed camps. But perhaps the most terrifying part of the Cold War began in 1949, when the Soviet Union successfully tested its first atomic bomb. Until then, the United States had been the only nuclear power, but now both sides had weapons capable of wiping out entire cities. This started the nuclear arms race, a competition to build more bombs, bigger bombs, and faster missiles. hydrogen bombs, intercontinental ballistic missiles, nuclear submarines, each weapon more powerful than the last. For the first time in history, humans had created the ability to destroy civilization in hours. And both sides prepared for the possibility that one mistake could end the world. But the Cold War wasn't only about weapons. It was a war fought in shadows, through spies, secret operations, and psychological battles. The CIA and the KGB became symbols of this invisible conflict. Both sides spied on each other, recruited double agents, and conducted covert missions across the globe. Information became a weapon. Propaganda filled radios, newspapers, posters, and movies. Each superpower tried to shape how people viewed the world. Everything became political. Technology, sports, space exploration, even art and music. The struggle also spread to other countries. The United States and the Soviet Union didn't fight each other directly, but they supported opposite sides in local conflicts, known as proxy wars. In Korea, the peninsula was divided into North and South, backed by the Soviets and the Americans. In Vietnam, communist forces fought American-backed armies. In Afghanistan, the Soviet Union invaded and the United States supported the resistance. These proxy wars caused millions of deaths and shaped entire regions for generations. The Cold War may not have had a single front line, but it had countless battlegrounds. By the early 1950s, the divide was complete. Two superpowers, two ideologies, two visions of the future locked in a rivalry that would last nearly half a century. The Cold War reshaped borders, created new alliances, and influenced everything from military technology to everyday fears. People lived with the constant possibility of nuclear war. Students practiced emergency drills. Families built fallout shelters. The threat felt real because it was. And yet, despite decades of pressure, despite crises, spies, revolutions, and nuclear standoffs, the Cold War never erupted into a full-scale war between the United States and the Soviet Union. This conflict was fought in minds, politics, and strategies, not through direct combat. The legacy of the Cold War is still with us today. The alliances formed back then still exist. The political divisions still influence global relations. And many modern conflicts trace their roots back to decisions made in those early years. The Cold War was more than just a rivalry. It was a turning point in human history, a global struggle between two visions of the world, each determined to shape the future. A conflict without open battle, but with consequences that still echo through the present.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video and want more history explained clearly, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next episode. See you in the next video.